Welcome back to another episode of Out Loud Geek, where we discuss news and views about pop culture, science fiction, fantasy, food, cooking, the outdoors, and more. Welcome to another episode of Who Will Be the Biggest Flop, Part 4. Let's take a look at how the 6 contenders have been battling it out this week. But first, you might notice a small change on the right-hand side showing the list of social media networks that Out Loud Geek is on. In addition to Facebook and Twitter, Out Loud Geek is now also on Instagram and the brand new social media platform called Threads. So I will be posting new video notices on Instagram and Threads in addition to Facebook and Twitter, as well as other types of posts. Links to all of these social media sites can be found in the description below if you want to follow them. Now on with the video. Let's begin with a brief recap of last week's rankings for the 6 contenders slugging it out for the highly coveted title of Biggest Flop. The entry from Lucasfilm and Disney, Indiana Jones and the Dildo of Destruction, was in first place. This resulted with the entry from Warner Bros. Discovery and DC Studios, The Flash, being pushed down into second place. Disney Pixar's entry, Elemental, sat in third place. Disney's live-action race-swapped remake of The Little Mermaid sat in fourth place. The entry from Paramount Studios and Hasbro, Transformers Rise of the Beasts, sat in fifth place. And Universal Pictures' entry Fast X sat in last place. And where do these contenders sit now? There were definitely some changes this weekend. The last time that Kathleen Kennedy and Lucasfilm had released a new movie into theaters was that dumpster fire of a movie, Star Wars IX: The Rise of Palpatine, back in 2019. So please give a warm welcome to her latest theatrical failure, Indiana Jones and the Dildo of Destruction, which, while it premiered last weekend at the top of the domestic box office, its opening weekend earnings had fallen short of media expectations. And for its second weekend, it couldn't even hold on to first place. Instead, it came in second place in this weekend's domestic box office behind a movie that has a $16 million production budget, the little-known movie entitled Insidious: The Red Door, which made so much money during its opening weekend that it has already broken even. So Lucasfilm president Kathleen Kennedy, Disney CEO Bob Iger, and director James Mangold have something genuine to celebrate for their latest Indiana Jones movie and its bloated $294.7 million production budget that could very well earn the coveted title of Biggest Flop. Domestically, the movie earned a paltry $26.5 million for its second weekend at the box office, but it had earned more than that during the week thanks to last weekend being an extended holiday weekend. So the movie's domestic box office total now sits at $121.2 million, which was a 102% gain over its opening weekend thanks to last weekend's 4th of July holiday. Internationally, the movie earned another $56.7 million, which was a drop of 19% from its opening weekend for an international total of $126.7 million. Globally, the movie earned another $117.9 million for a weekly drop of 9.3% for a current global box office total of $247.9 million. Projecting forward, using the same range of possible average weekly drops as I have used in several previous videos, which is a range between 31.8 to 38%, yields a possible range of final global gross box office revenue of $440.2 million to $500.5 million. So with an estimated break-even point range of $736.8 million to $884.1 million, which is based on multiplying the movie's reported bloated production budget of $294.7 million by 2.5 and 3.0 respectively, to account for the 50% of gross ticket sales that movie theaters keep for themselves, as well as the additional costs of marketing the movie and other miscellaneous costs that the studio pays above and beyond the production budget, that means that the movie may lose as much as $237 million to $444 million in global gross box office revenue. When we divide that range by 2, we get a range of $118 million to $222 million in possible net losses for Disney and Kathleen Kennedy's Lucasfilm, which immediately allows Indiana Jones and the Dildo of Destruction to remain in first place in the race to see who will win the coveted biggest flop title. And that brings us to our second contender. So let's have a warm welcome for the Disney Pixar entry, Elemental. For its fourth weekend in theaters, it came in at fourth place in this weekend's domestic box office with earnings of $9.6 million, which, when combined with the $10.9 million that it earned during the week, was a 23% drop from last week and brought its domestic box office total up to $109.2 million. Internationally, the movie earned another $44.7 million, which was another slight gain of 5.42% over last week to bring its current international box office total up to $142.7 million. Globally, the movie earned another $65.1 million to bring its current global gross box office total up to $251.9 million. Using the overall Pixar average weekly drop of 28.4% and one standard deviation above and below to project the movie's final global gross box office revenue, yields a range between $357.8 million to $524.2 million. Since the movie's estimated break-even point is $500 million, which is obtained by multiplying the movie's $200 million production budget by 2.5, and taking into account that Disney did not heavily advertise the movie, Elemental could potentially be disqualified because its newly updated projected final global gross box office range extends beyond the estimated break-even point. Thus, possible disqualification automatically placed Elemental into last place for its chances of winning the coveted biggest flop title. Its possible global gross box office loss, provided that it doesn't break even, now ranges from 0 to $142.2 million, which, when divided by 2, yields a possible loss to Disney Pixar of $0 to $71.1 million. This brings us to our third contestant, which came in 8th place in this weekend's domestic box office. So let's have a warm welcome for the entry from Paramount Pictures and Hasbro, Transformers: Rise of the Beasts. The movie earned another $5 million at the domestic box office to bring its current domestic total up to $146.7 million. It also earned another $13.4 million internationally to bring its total international box office up to $256.3 million. So its global box office increased by $24 million to bring its current global gross box office revenue up to $403.1 million. Currently, its individual weekly drops have an overall average of 38.67%. So projecting forward by also taking into account the average weekly drops that are up to one standard deviation away based on the previous 6 Transformers movies, yields a projected final global box office range of $430 million to $458.3 million. So given that the movie's estimated break-even point ranges between $500 million to $600 million, which is based on multiplying the movie's $200 million production budget by 2.5 and 3.0 respectively, we get a potential range of global gross box office loss of $41.7 million to $170.1 million. When we divide that range by 2, we get a potential loss for the studios of $20.9 million to $85 million. Which places Transformers: Rise of the Beasts currently into second place ahead of Elemental and behind Indiana Jones and the Dildo of Destruction, which currently sits in first place. Now let's welcome our fourth contestant, which came in 9th place in this weekend's domestic box office, Disney's live-action race swap remake of The Little Mermaid. The movie earned another $3.5 million at the domestic box office, bringing its current domestic total up to $289 million. Internationally, the movie earned another $10.3 million to bring its current international total up to $253.1 million. So globally, the movie earned another $18.3 million since last week, bringing its current global gross box office total up to $542.1 million. Based on my current projections that are based on an overall average weekly drop in global box office of 32.3%, the movie will likely top out at around $580 million, which is slightly higher than the $571 million that I had projected last week. So based on the movie's break-even point of $780 million, which is calculated by adding the movie's $250 million production budget and the $140 million spent by Disney to market the movie, yields a total cost of $390 million, which then gets multiplied by 2 to account for the 50% of gross ticket sales that movie theaters keep for themselves. The movie's total global gross box office loss will probably be around $200.2 million. When we divide that by 2, Disney's net loss on The Little Mermaid is currently projected to be around $100.1 million, which puts the movie into second place behind Indiana Jones and the Dildo of Destruction, with Transformers Rise of the Beasts and Elemental falling into third and fourth place, respectively. That brings us to our fifth contestant based on it coming in 12th place at this weekend's domestic box office. So let's have a warm welcome for the entry from Warner Bros. Discovery and DC Studios, the increasingly underperforming superhero movie, The Flash, starring everyone's favorite wackadoodle actor, Ezra Miller. As I had reported in a video that I had released over a week ago, Warner Bros. Discovery and DC Studios announced that they are going to release the movie onto streaming on July 18th. And that announcement definitely did not help The Flash gain bigger audiences at the box office. Its domestic box office earnings for its fourth weekend in release were only $2.2 million, which brought the movie's total domestic box office to $105.2 million. This means that the movie did finally break $100 million domestically. Internationally, the movie earned another $11.3 million to bring its current international box office total to $156.4 million. Globally, the movie earned another $17.2 million to bring its current total global gross box office up to around $261.6 million. So based on a current average weekly drop of 48.3% and one standard deviation above and below that, I am currently projecting that the final global gross box office for The Flash will likely fall somewhere between $273.2 million to $291.1 million. And given the movie's estimated break-even point range of $550 million to $660 million, which is based on multiplying its $220 million production budget by 2.5 and 3.0 respectively, the current projected global gross box office loss for the movie ranges between $249 million to $393 million. Dividing that range by 2 yields a range of possible loss for Warner Bros. Discovery and DC Studios of $129.4 million to $193.4 million. This means that The Flash retains its second place position from last week for the coveted biggest flop prize, immediately behind Indiana Jones and the Dildo of Destruction, with The Little Mermaid moving into third place, Transformers Rise of the Beasts moving into fourth place, and Elemental moving into fifth place. And that brings us to our final contestant. So let's have a warm welcome for the entry from Universal Pictures, the action movie Fast X. The movie earned another $130,000 domestically this weekend to bring its domestic total up to $145.9 million. Internationally, the movie earned another $13.5 million to bring its international box office total up to $575.4 million. So globally, the movie earned another $14 million to bring its current global gross box office total up to $721.3 million. Projecting forward with average weekly drops of 26.72%, the movie will more than likely top out at around $757.3 million. With the movie's break-even point of $840 million, which is based on its $340 million production budget and $80 million spent to market the movie's current projected global gross box office loss comes to around $82.7 million. Dividing that by 2 yields a value of around $41.4 million in losses for Universal Pictures, which puts Fast X into 5th place behind Transformers Rise of the Beasts and 1 place ahead of Elemental, which could potentially break even. Well, this was indeed quite a shakeup this week thanks to Elemental now having the potential of breaking even. To recap, Indiana Jones and the Dildo of Destruction is currently in first place, with The Flash coming in a close second place. The Little Mermaid is in third place. Transformers Rise of the Beasts is in fourth place. Fast X is in fifth place. And Elemental is now in last place. Be sure to tune in next week to see who will be the biggest flop. Thanks for watching today, and a huge thanks to everyone who has subscribed to our channel. We appreciate your support. If you enjoyed this video, please press the like button, and please feel free to share a comment. If you'd like to help support this channel, please press the red subscribe button, and please press the bell to receive notifications for new content. You can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, Threads, and Twitter by clicking on the links in the description. Until next time, this is Out Loud Geek.